Ma'am, people like you don't typically have accounts here. Perhaps you'd be more comfortable at the community branch across town. The bank manager's smile was ice cold and professional. Her manicured fingers drummed against the marble counter as she looked down at the impeccably dressed black woman standing before her. Dr. Eleanor Vance adjusted her navy designer brand blazer and maintained eye contact. She had heard these words before in different forms throughout her career, but today felt different. Today, these real-life stories of discrimination were about to take an unexpected turn. The college student at the nearby ATM kept her phone camera rolling, not realizing she was capturing one of those black stories that would soon transform an entire industry. These touching stories of quiet power were about to unfold in ways no one could predict. Have you ever been judged by your appearance in a place where you actually held all the power? The digital clock above the teller windows showed 2:52 p.m. Dr. Vance glanced at her platinum luxury watch brand watch. 8 minutes until her board meeting. "I need to withdraw $50,000 for my daughter's tuition payment," she said calmly, sliding her driver's license and account documentation across the polished counter. Miss Christine Davies, the branch manager, barely glanced at the documents. Her 15 years at Elite Financial Group had earned her a spotless record and a corner office. She prided herself on reading situations quickly. "This amount requires additional verification," Miss Davies said, her voice carrying that particular tone reserved for difficult customers, especially for certain demographic profiles that might trigger our fraud prevention protocols. The words hung in the air like smoke. Dr. Vance felt the familiar tightness in her chest, the same feeling she'd experienced in boardrooms, at country clubs, and in first-class airline lounges, the assumption that she didn't belong at the corner ATM. Miss Chloe Lim was supposed to be filming a TikTok about campus banking tips for her finance class. Instead, her phone caught something far more compelling. Her viewer count was climbing: 847, 1,232, 1,232. As discrimination unfolded in real time. "I have my account number, valid identification, and authorization codes," Dr. Vance said, her voice steady. "What additional verification do you need?" Miss Davies' smile tightened. "These large cash withdrawals require managerial oversight. We need to ensure the funds aren't questionable in nature." The implication was clear. Dr. Vance had heard it 1,000 times in different forms. The suggestion that her money, her success, her presence itself was somehow suspicious. "I understand you have protocols," Dr. Vance replied, checking her watch again, 2:54 p.m. "However, I do have a time constraint. Could we expedite this process?" "Ma'am, these things take time. Patience is required for complex verifications." Behind the counter, Miss Sarah Jones.
This conversation is becoming one. Ladies, perhaps we could continue this discussion in my office privately. "I prefer transparency," Dr. Vance replied. "Public institutions should operate with public accountability." Ms. Sarah Jones whispered urgently to another teller, "Check the executive directory. I swear I've seen her picture somewhere." But before anyone could act on that suggestion, Ms. Davies doubled down on her mistake. "Look, some people need to learn their place. This is a prestigious institution with standards to maintain." RDS hung in the air like a toxic cloud. Even Mr. Green winced. Mr. Ben Adams closed his eyes briefly, knowing exactly what Ms. Davies had just done. Ms. Lim's phone nearly slipped from her hands. The comment section exploded. Did she just say, "What? Oh, hell no, this is about to go viral. Someone needs to check this manager." The live stream hit 15,000 viewers. Local news Twitter accounts were already picking up the story. Screenshots were being shared faster than Ms. Lim could process. Dr. Vance's composure never wavered. If anything, she seemed to grow calmer as the situation escalated. "My place," she repeated thoughtfully. "And where exactly do you believe my place to be, Ms. Davies?" Ms. Davies realized her mistake too late. The lobby had gone dead silent, except for the soft hum of the air conditioning and the occasional ping of notification sounds from the growing audience of phone cameras. "I didn't mean, that's not what I—" Ms. Davies stammered. "Please continue. I'm genuinely curious about your assessment of my place in this institution." Mr. Green stepped forward quickly, but he paused, suddenly realizing he didn't know the customer's name. "Vance." Dr. Vance supplied helpfully. "Dr. Vance, I apologize profusely for any misunderstanding. Let's resolve this immediately. But Ms. Davies, perhaps sensing her authority being undermined, pushed forward. David, I'm handling this situation. We can't just bend policies because someone makes a scene. A scene? Dr. Vance's voice carried a note of genuine curiosity. Is requesting my own money from my own account considered making a scene? Mr. Ben Adams shifted his weight from foot to foot. He'd been a security guard for 3 years and had seen his share of difficult situations, but something about this felt different, wrong. The customer wasn't aggressive or demanding. She was simply present, powerfully, undeniably present. Dr. Vance's phone buzzed again. She glanced at it briefly. The caller ID showed Ms. Patricia Brooks, Chief Operating Officer. She declined the call, then declined another from Mr. James White, Board Chair. Ms. Davies noticed the calls, noticed the expensive phone, the way Dr. Vance carried herself. For the first time, doubt crept into her expression. Who keeps calling you? Ms. Davies asked, trying to regain control of the narrative. Colleagues wondering where I am. Dr. Vance's smile was enigmatic. I mentioned I had a brief errand before our meeting. The lobby's atmosphere had shifted. What began as routine discrimination was transforming into something else entirely. The other customers sensed it. The staff sensed it. Even Ms. Davies was beginning to sense it. Ms. Lim's viewer count approached 20,000. The story was spreading beyond her initial audience. Elite Financial Group was beginning to trend. Screenshots of Ms. Davies' face were being shared with increasingly angry commentary. Ma'am, Mr. Green tried again. What can we do to resolve this quickly? Dr. Vance checked her watch. 2:59 p.m. Actually, she said, reaching into her purse, I think it's time to clarify something. She withdrew her wallet, but instead of producing another form of identification, she pulled out a key card, the kind used for executive elevator access. Mr. Ben Adams's eyes widened. He recognized that card type. Only the highest level executives had them. Ms. Davies, Dr. Vance said conversationally, in your 15 years with Elite Financial Group, have you ever attended the annual shareholder meeting? What? Why would I attend that? Curiosity, perhaps? Professional development? It's quite informative. They always show the executive leadership photos. Ms. Davies' confidence was evaporating. Something in Dr. Vance's tone and her questions was setting off alarm bells. Ms. Sarah Jones had stopped pretending to work. She was openly staring now, her computer screen forgotten. I know I've seen her somewhere, she muttered. Dr. Vance's phone rang again. This time she answered. Patricia? Yes, I'm still downstairs. No, just handling a small customer service matter. Could you come down for a moment? I think we need to discuss branch protocols. She hung up and smiled at Ms. Davies. My colleague will be joining us shortly. Mr. Green's face had gone pale. Which colleague? Ms. Patricia Brooks. Perhaps you know her, Chief Operating Officer? The color drained from Ms. Davies' face completely. Even the customers in the lobby recognized that name from the business news. Mr. Ben Adams stepped closer to Dr. Vance. Ma'am, are you... Dr. Vance held up a gentle hand. Let's wait for Patricia. She'll want to hear Ms. Davies' explanation about customer demographics and suspicious transaction patterns. Ms. Davies' mouth opened and closed soundlessly. Mr. Green was frantically trying to process what was happening. Ms. Lim's live stream was approaching 25,000 viewers. The comment section was pure chaos. Who is she? Who I think she is? Check the Elite Financial Group website. Someone Googled Dr. Vance. This manager is done. The elevator at the far end of the lobby chimed softly. The doors opened, and Ms. Patricia Brooks, Chief Operating Officer of Elite Financial Group, stepped out. She was a tall woman in her 50s with silver hair and the bearing of someone accustomed to command. She looked around the lobby, taking in the crowd, the phones, the tension crackling in the air like electricity before a storm. Her eyes found Dr. Vance immediately. Dr. Vance, she said, her voice carrying clearly across the marble expanse. Is there a problem? The lobby fell into complete silence. Even the air conditioning seemed to pause. Ms. Lim's phone captured every detail as 30,000 viewers held their collective breath. Ms. Davies' face cycled through confusion, recognition, and dawning horror in the span of 3 seconds. Patricia, Dr. Vance said calmly, I was just trying to make a routine withdrawal when Ms. Davies here expressed some concerns about my account. Ms. Patricia Brooks' expression hardened as she took in the scene. The crowd of customers with phones, the live stream comments visible on screens, the obvious tension radiating from her staff. "What kind of concerns?" Ms. Brooks asked, her voice carrying the authority of her position. Authority of someone who'd spent 25 years climbing corporate hierarchies. Ms. Davies opened and closed her mouth several times before finding her voice. There was a large withdrawal request. Standard protocols, $50,000. Dr. Vance supplied helpfully. "For my daughter's tuition, I have all the required documentation." Ms. Brooks's eyes swept over the papers on the counter, then fixed on Ms. Davies with laser intensity. "And the problem was, large cash amounts require additional verification." Mr. Green jumped in, trying to protect his subordinate, especially when there might be irregular patterns. Irregular patterns? Ms. Brooks's voice could have cut glass. "In Dr. Vance's account." The title hit the room like a thunderclap. Dr. Vance, not Miss, not ma'am, Doctor. Mr. Ben Adams stepped back slightly, finally understanding who he was looking at. Ms. Sarah Jones had her hand over her mouth, staring in shock. The other customers were furiously Googling on their phones. Ms. Lim's viewer count hit 40,000. The comments were scrolling too fast to read, but the sentiment was clear. This was about to become legendary. "I think," Ms. Davies said weakly, "there may have been a misunderstanding." "Oh, I think the understanding is quite clear," Dr. Vance replied. "You told me that people like me don't typically have accounts here, that I should be more comfortable at the community branch. You questioned whether my funds were legitimate, suggested they might be proceeds from money laundering, terrorism, or drug dealing." Each word was delivered with surgical precision. Ms. Brooks's face grew darker with every sentence. "You also mentioned, Doctor," Vance continued, "that some people need to learn their place, that this is a prestigious institution with standards to maintain." "I never said," Ms. Davies began.
Actually, Ms. Lim called out from across the lobby, her voice shaking with excitement. "I have it all on video. 28,000 people watching live, plus everyone who screen recorded it." Ms. Brooks closed her eyes briefly. In the age of social media, this was a public relations nightmare that would reach the board within hours. "Ms. Davies," Ms. Brooks said, her voice deadly quiet, "are you aware of who you've been speaking to?" Ms. Davies looked desperately between Ms. Brooks and Dr. Vance, the truth finally beginning to penetrate her consciousness. Dr. Vance reached into her purse and withdrew her corporate identification badge. She held it up so everyone in the lobby could see. Dr. Eleanor Vance, Chief Executive Officer and Chairman of the Board, Elite Financial Group. The silence that followed was deafening. Mr. David Green made a sound like air being let out of a balloon. Mr. Ben Adams took off his security cap and ran his hand through his hair. Ms. Sarah Jones actually gasped audibly. Ms. Davies's knees visibly buckled. She gripped the counter for support as the full magnitude of what she had done crashed over her. Ms. Lim's live stream exploded, 50,000 viewers and climbing. The comment section was pure pandemonium. "The CEO! The actual CEO! She owns the bank. This manager just discriminated against her own boss. Career suicide in real time. This is the best thing I've ever seen." Screenshots were flooding Twitter, Instagram, TikTok. News outlets were already picking up the story. CEO Deadman's service was trending nationwide. "Oh my God," Ms. Davies whispered, the color completely gone from her face. "Oh my God, I didn't know." "You didn't know," Dr. Vance repeated thoughtfully. "But you knew enough to make assumptions about my character, my legitimacy, my place in this institution. You knew enough to suggest I might be a criminal." Ms. Brooks stepped forward. "Dr. Vance, I am profoundly sorry. Patricia, this isn't your fault. This is a teachable moment." Dr. Vance's voice remained calm and controlled. "Ms. Davies, what you didn't know is that today's board meeting includes a comprehensive review of customer service metrics across all branches." Ms. Davies's face went from white to green. "We've been tracking complaint patterns, analyzing customer feedback, reviewing security footage. Your branch has some interesting statistics." Dr. Vance turned to address the lobby full of witnesses, speaking clearly for Ms. Lim's livestream audience. In the past 6 months, this branch has received 17 formal discrimination complaints. That's 300% higher than our company average. Customer satisfaction scores are 23% below target. We've had $2.3 million in account closures directly attributed to poor service experiences. The numbers hit like physical blows. Mr. Green was frantically calculating whether his own job was in jeopardy. Mr. Adams was wondering if he should update his resume. But here's what's most interesting, Dr. Vance continued. 86% of those complaints came from customers of color. The pattern is so pronounced that our legal department flagged it for federal review. Ms. Davies was hyperventilating. I need to sit down. You'll have plenty of time to sit, Ms. Brooks said coldly. Dr. Vance, what would you like me to do? Dr. Vance checked her watch. 3:02 p.m. The board meeting had officially started without her. First, let's complete my transaction. $50,000 as originally requested. Ms. Sarah Jones practically flew to process the withdrawal. Her hands shook as she counted out the money, triple-checking every bill. Second, Dr. Vance continued, I think we need to have an immediate discussion about branch management and customer service protocols. She turned to Ms. Lim, who was still live streaming to an audience that had grown to 65,000 viewers. Young lady, thank you for documenting this interaction. This is exactly why transparency in business practices is so important. Ms. Lim nodded enthusiastically, still in shock at what she had witnessed. Ms. Davies, Dr. Vance's voice was gentle but firm, you have a choice to make. We can handle this privately, or we can let HR conduct a full investigation while this video continues to circulate online. Ms. Davies looked around the lobby at the sea of phones, at the live stream still broadcasting her humiliation to tens of thousands of people, at her colleagues who... I couldn't meet her eyes. What are you offering? A conversation upstairs right now? Ms. Brooks nodded toward the elevators. Conference room A is ready. As the group began moving toward the elevators, Mr. Ben Adams approached Dr. Vance hesitantly. Doctor? Vance, ma'am. I just want to say I'm sorry. I should have spoken up. Dr. Vance stopped and looked at the young man. Ben, what did you see here today? I saw someone being treated unfairly because of how they looked. And what did you do about it? Mr. Adams's shoulders sagged. Nothing. I followed orders. Next time, Mr. Adams straightened. Next time, I'll remember that doing the right thing is more important than following bad orders. Dr. Vance smiled. That's exactly what I was hoping you'd say. The elevator arrived. As the doors opened, Dr. Vance turned back to the lobby full of witnesses. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for your patience. This has been an educational experience for everyone involved. The doors closed, carrying the CEO, the COO, and the branch manager toward a conversation that would change everything. Ms. Lim finally stopped her live stream after 2 hours and 100,000 viewers, but the story was just beginning. Conference Room A occupied the northeast corner of the 47th floor, with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking a major city's financial district. The polished mahogany table could seat 20 executives, but today only 4 people sat around its expansive surface. Dr. Vance took her customary seat at the head of the table. Ms. Brooks sat to her right, a legal pad already filled with notes. Ms. Davies sat across from them, looking small and vulnerable in the executive chair that seemed to dwarf her. Mr. David Green had been dismissed to handle the lobby situation and coordinate with media relations. Before we begin, Dr. Vance said, opening her laptop, I want you to understand the scope of what happened downstairs. She turned the screen towards Ms. Davies. The social media metrics were staggering. Ms. Lim's live stream reached 127,000 concurrent viewers at its peak. The video has been shared 45,000 times in the past hour. CEO dead service is trending in 12 countries. Our stock price has dropped 2.3% since the story broke. Ms. Davies stared at the numbers in horror. I had no idea it would go viral. Ms. Brooks interjected. In 2025, everything goes viral. That's why we train our staff on customer service excellence and bias prevention. Dr. Vance pulled up another document. Ms. Davies, according to HR records, you've completed our annual sensitivity training 4 times. You've signed our non-discrimination policy acknowledgement. You've attended 3 workshops on unconscious bias. Ms. Davies nodded miserably. So help me understand, Doctor. Vance continued. How someone with your training and experience could make the decisions you made today. The question hung in the air. Ms. Davies struggled to find an answer that wouldn't damn her further. It seemed like she started, then stopped. How could she explain 15 years of accumulated prejudice? How could she justify the assumptions that felt so natural they'd become automatic? Ms. Brooks consulted her notes. Let's review the specific language you used. People like you don't typically have accounts here. What did you mean by people like you? Ms. Davies's face flushed. I didn't mean anything racial. Then what did you mean? The space was silent. Dr. Vance opened another file. Our security system records all transactions and interactions. We have audio and video of everything that happened. Would you like me to play it back? No, Ms. Davies whispered. Please no. Then let's discuss the business impact. Dr. Vance's fingers moved across her keyboard, bringing up spreadsheets and charts. Your branch has the highest complaint rate in our system. 23% customer complaint rate versus an 8% company average. The numbers appeared on the room's large monitor. Charts and graphs painted a damning picture of systematic service failures. Customer retention in your branch is 67%, while the company average is 89%. Revenue per customer is $4,200, while the company average is $6,800. Customer lifetime value is $12,000. Each statistic landed like a physical blow. Ms. Davies had known her numbers weren't great, but seeing them laid out like this was devastating. Now let's look at the demographic breakdown, Ms. Brooks said, taking over the presentation. Complaint patterns show a clear correlation with customer race and ethnicity. Minority customers are 340% more likely to report negative experiences at your branch. Ms. Davies's career was disintegrating in real time, documented by data that couldn't be argued with or explained away. The legal exposure is significant, Ms. Brooks continued. 17 formal discrimination complaints in 6 months. Our legal department estimates potential liability at $3 million, $200,000 if these cases go to litigation. Dr. Vance leaned forward. But here's what concerns me most. This isn't about one bad day or one poor decision. This is about a pattern of behavior that reflects systematic bias. She pulled up another document. Federal banking regulations are clear about discriminatory practices. The Equal Credit Opportunity Act, the Fair Housing Act, the Civil Rights Act, Section 1981. Violations can result in federal prosecution, not just civil liability. Ms. Davies was visibly trembling now. What happens to me? That depends, Doctor, Vance said, on whether you understand the gravity of what occurred and whether you're committed to change. She stood and walked to the windows, looking out at the city below. Christine, you humiliated a customer based on her race. You questioned her legitimacy, suggested she might be a criminal, and told her she didn't belong in our institution. You did this in front of witnesses, in front of a live stream audience of over 100,000 people. Ms. Davies began crying quietly. But more than that, Doctor, Vance continued. You revealed a mindset that has been poisoning customer relationships for years. The data shows this wasn't an isolated incident. It was just the first time you got caught on camera. Ms. Brooks placed a folder on the table. Your options. Option 1. Immediate termination for cause. No severance, no neutral reference. The incident goes on your permanent record, and we cooperate fully with any discrimination lawsuits filed against you personally. Ms. Davies' breathing became labored. Option 2. Resignation with a neutral reference, conditional on your participation in a comprehensive bias remediation program and your cooperation with our internal review of other potential incidents. Option 3, Dr. Vance said, returning to her seat, is the one I prefer. You stay, but everything changes. Ms. Davies looked up through her tears. Stay. You undergo intensive retraining. You work directly with our diversity and inclusion team. You participate in community outreach programs. You help us redesign our customer service protocols to prevent this from ever happening again. The offer was unexpected. Ms. Davies had assumed her career was over. Why would you give me that chance? Dr. Vance's expression softened slightly. Because firing you doesn't solve the systematic problem, it just moves it somewhere else. I'd rather transform the behavior than simply punish it. Ms. Brooks looked skeptical. The board won't like this approach. The public relations damage? The board will like the results, Doctor, Vance said firmly. We're going to turn this crisis into an opportunity for real change. She turned back to Ms. Davies. But make no mistake, this is your last chance. One more complaint, one more incident, one more suggestion that any customer doesn't belong in our institution, and you're gone permanently. Ms. Davies nodded frantically. Yes, I understand. Thank you for... Don't thank me yet. Earn it. Dr. Vance returned to her laptop. Here's what happens immediately. You'll be suspended for 2 weeks without pay while we conduct a full review. You'll complete 40 hours of bias training with external consultants. You'll participate in community forums where you'll listen to customers share their experiences with discrimination. Ms. Brooks was taking notes rapidly. What about the media situation? We're going to own it, Doctor, Vance said. Full transparency. We'll acknowledge the problem, outline our response, and demonstrate our commitment to change. This becomes a case study in corporate accountability. She pulled up a new document. We're implementing the Vance protocol company-wide. Every customer interaction will be monitored for bias indicators. We're installing AI-powered analysis systems to flag problematic language patterns. We're creating a direct escalation path to executive leadership for discrimination complaints. Ms. Davies listened in amazement as her humiliation was transformed into a catalyst for systematic reform. We're also establishing a $500,000 zero-cents fund for financial literacy programs in underserved communities. We're partnering with historically black colleges and universities for recruitment. We're requiring bias testing for all management positions. Ms. Brooks was already calculating the costs and logistics. The board meeting is about to get very interesting. Dr. Vance finished. Christine, do you accept these terms? Ms. Davies didn't hesitate. Yes, absolutely, yes. Then let's go save your career and transform this company. As they prepared to leave the conference room, Dr. Vance's phone buzzed with a text from Ms. Lim. Doctor, Vance, thank you for handling this with such grace. You've inspired a generation of young women. The video now has 2 million views. Dr. Vance smiled and showed the message to Ms. Brooks. 2 million people just watched corporate leadership in action. Let's make sure they see what real change looks like. The elevator doors opened to reveal a lobby full of reporters, cameras, and customers who had heard about the incident. It was time for the next phase of the transformation. Ms. Davies took a deep breath. Her humiliation was about to become public, but so was her redemption. The real work was just beginning. 6 weeks later, Elite Financial Group looked different. Not just physically, though the new customer service signage was impossible to miss. The change ran deeper into the very culture of the institution. Ms. Chloe Lim sat in the same lobby where she'd accidentally captured history, but now she was there intentionally. Her finance professor had assigned the elite financial group case study, and she was documenting the transformation for her senior thesis. The Vance protocol had become industry standard. Every customer interaction was monitored by AI systems that flagged potentially discriminatory language. Dashboard displays in every branch showed real-time customer satisfaction scores broken down by demographic categories. Mr. Ben Adams, the former security guard, now wore a different uniform. His new title was Director of Customer Experience, and his job was to ensure every person entering the bank felt welcomed and valued. The training was intense, he told Ms. Lim during their interview. 40 hours of workshops on unconscious bias, cultural competency, and customer psychology. But it changed how I see everything. Ms. Sarah Jones had been promoted to branch manager after Mr. David Green's quiet resignation. She'd spent 3 weeks in specialized training, learning to recognize and interrupt bias patterns in real-time customer service situations. "We have monthly community forums now," Ms. Jones explained. "Customers come in and share their experiences, both positive and negative. It keeps us accountable." The forum meetings were held in the same conference room where Ms. Christine Davies had faced her career-defining choice 6 weeks earlier. Ms. Davies herself attended every session, listening to story after story of discrimination, microaggressions, and systemic bias in financial services. "The hardest part," Ms. Davies admitted to Ms. Lim, "was realizing how many times I'd made people feel the way I made Dr. Vance feel. How many customers I'd lost, how many relationships I'd damaged, how many people I'd made feel unwelcome in their own bank." The transformation hadn't been easy. Ms. Davies' suspension had stretched into a month as she completed intensive bias remediation training. She'd read books, attended workshops, and participated in role-playing exercises where she experienced discrimination from the other side. "They made me spend a day trying to get service at businesses where I was the minority." She recalled car dealerships in predominantly black neighborhoods and community banks in Latino areas. "I felt what it was like to be looked at with suspicion, to have my legitimacy questioned." The experience had been humiliating but transformative. For the first time, Ms. Davies understood the weight of assumptions, the damage of bias, and the power differential in every customer interaction. Dr. Eleanor Vance's office had become a destination for executives from other financial institutions seeking to understand the elite financial group model. The company's stock price had recovered and then soared, driven by improved customer satisfaction scores and positive media coverage of their transformation initiative. "We've received over 3,000 applications for new accounts since the incident," Ms. Patricia Brooks reported during their weekly leadership meeting. "Customer retention is up 23%. Revenue per customer has increased 31%. Most importantly, discrimination complaints have dropped to 0 across all branches." The success wasn't just financial. Elite Financial Group had become a case study in crisis management and cultural transformation. Prestigious business school was developing a curriculum around their approach, and other banks were implementing similar protocols. Ms. Lim's original TikTok video had been viewed 15 million times. She'd been interviewed by major news networks, invited to speak at business conferences, and offered internships at top financial firms. But she'd chosen to stay at Elite Financial Group for her summer internship, working directly with the customer experience team. "Dr. Vance showed me what real leadership looks like," Ms. Lim explained to her documentary camera. She could have destroyed Ms. Christine Davies' career. She could have made an example of her. Instead, she chose transformation over revenge. The community impact had been equally significant. The $500,000 financial literacy fund had expanded to $2 million, supporting programs at 12 universities and 30 community centers. High school students from underserved areas were participating in banking internships, and financial education workshops were being held in community centers across the city. Ms. Christine Davies had become an unlikely spokesperson for the transformation. Her story of recognition, redemption, and reform resonated with audiences across the country. She'd spoken at diversity conferences, participated in bias training programs at other companies, and co-authored an article for prestigious Business Review titled, "When Bias Becomes Visible, A Manager's Journey from Discrimination to Transformation." "I can't undo what I did," Ms. Davies said during a panel discussion at the National Banking Association conference, "but I can use my experience to help others." Recognize their own biases before they cause harm. The panel, moderated by Dr. Vance herself, featured Ms. Davies alongside other executives who had implemented similar transformation programs. The discussion was frank, uncomfortable at times, but ultimately hopeful. "Change is possible, Doctor," Vance told the audience of 2,000 banking professionals, "but it requires acknowledging uncomfortable truths about our industry, our institutions, and ourselves." The elite financial group model was being replicated across the financial sector. The Federal Reserve had issued new guidance incorporating elements of the Vance Protocol. State banking commissioners were requiring bias training for all customer-facing employees. Back in the lobby where it all began, a new plaque hung near the customer service counter. "Every customer deserves dignity, respect, and equal treatment. This commitment is not negotiable." Below it, a QR code linked to a real-time customer feedback system. Complaints went directly to executive leadership within minutes. Customer satisfaction scores were displayed publicly on digital boards, updated hourly. Mr. Ben Adams often stood near that plaque, remembering the day he'd chosen silence over action. "I learned that neutrality in the face of discrimination is complicity," he told new employee orientation groups. "Our job isn't just to provide banking services. It's to ensure every person who walks through that door feels valued and respected." The transformation had rippled outward beyond elite financial group. Other businesses in the building had implemented similar protocols. The local Chamber of Commerce had adopted bias training requirements for member organizations. Ms. Lim's video had sparked a broader conversation about discrimination in service industries. Dr. Vance's daughter had used the tuition money to enroll in a business ethics program inspired by her mother's handling of the crisis. "She showed me that true power isn't about punishment," the younger Vance wrote in her college application essay. "It's about using privilege to create positive change." The company's annual shareholder meeting, 6 months after the incident, was standing room only. Dr. Vance's presentation on cultural transformation and its business impact received a 5-minute standing ovation. "We didn't just change our policies," she told the shareholders. "We changed our purpose. We're not just a bank anymore. We're a catalyst for equity in financial services." The numbers supported her vision. Customer acquisition was up 67%. Employee satisfaction had reached all-time highs. The company had been recognized as Employer of the Year by 3 diversity organizations. But perhaps the most meaningful change was invisible to metrics and measurements. It lived in the interactions between staff and customers, in the assumptions that were no longer made, in the questions that were no longer asked. Ms. Christine Davies, reviewing her performance evaluation 6 months after the incident. Ident had achieved scores she'd never reached in 15 years of banking. Her customer satisfaction rating was 97%, and her bias incident reports were 0. "I'm a different person than I was that day," she reflected. "Not because I was punished, but because I was challenged to grow." The branch's walls now displayed photos from community events, financial literacy graduations, and diversity celebrations. Where once there had been sterile corporate messaging, now there were faces, customers, employees, and community members representing the full spectrum of humanity the bank served. Ms. Chloe Lim's senior thesis, titled "From Viral Discrimination to Systematic Reform, a Case Study in Corporate Transformation," would go on to win the university's award for social impact research. But more importantly, it documented a moment when accountability met opportunity, creating lasting change. 1 year later, Dr. Eleanor Vance stood before a packed auditorium at the International Conference on Business Ethics. The audience included CEOs, diversity officers, civil rights leaders, and students from around the world. When I walked into my own bank that Tuesday afternoon, I never imagined that 7 minutes of discrimination would spark a year of transformation, she began. But that's the power of visibility, accountability, and choosing reform over revenge. The conference had been organized around the elite financial group model, now studied in business schools globally. Companies across industries were implementing similar protocols, training programs, and accountability measures. Ms. Chloe Lim, now a graduate student and Elite Financial Group's Director of Digital Innovation, had documented the entire transformation process. Her follow-up videos had garnered over 50 million views combined, sparking conversations about discrimination, privilege, and corporate responsibility worldwide. These real-life stories matter because they show us that change is possible, Ms. Lim said during her own presentation. When we make bias visible, when we hold institutions accountable, when we choose transformation over punishment, we can create lasting impact. The Elite Financial Group story had become part of a larger movement, the #transformation. Not termination had inspired similar approaches to addressing workplace bias. Companies were learning to see discrimination incidents not as public relations disasters to be minimized, but as opportunities for genuine cultural change. Ms. Christine Davies had been promoted to Regional Diversity Officer, overseeing bias prevention programs across 12 branches. Her transformation story had become required viewing for new manager training programs throughout the financial industry. I went from being the face of discrimination to being an advocate for inclusion, Ms. Davies shared during her TED Talk, which had been viewed 8 million times. That journey was only possible because leadership chose to invest in redemption rather than simply impose punishment. The ripple effects continued expanding. Mr. Ben Adams had launched a nonprofit organization training security professionals on bias recognition and intervention. Ms. Sarah Jones was pursuing an MBA with a focus on inclusive leadership. Mr. David Green had found new purpose as a diversity consultant, helping other organizations navigate their own transformation journeys. The Federal Reserve had mandated bias training for all banking professionals, directly citing the Elite Financial Group model. 17 states had passed legislation requiring similar protocols in financial institutions. International banking organizations were adapting the framework for different cultural contexts. Dr. Vance's leadership approach had redefined crisis management in the corporate world. When faced with discrimination, leaders have a choice, she often said in her speaking engagements. We can focus on damage control, or we can embrace the opportunity for genuine transformation. The company's success had been recognized with numerous awards, but the most meaningful recognition came from customers whose lives had been changed by the new approach to service. Letters poured in from community members who felt truly welcomed for the first time, from employees who found purpose in their work, and from other business leaders inspired to examine their own practices. These touching stories of personal and professional transformation demonstrated that when institutions choose accountability over defensiveness, remarkable change becomes possible. The Black stories of discrimination that once felt hopeless now carried the promise of systemic reform. As Dr. Vance concluded her conference presentation, she issued a challenge to the audience. Every leader will face moments that reveal who they truly are. When bias becomes visible in your organization, you can choose silence, punishment, or transformation. Choose transformation. Choose to see crisis as opportunity. Choose to build bridges instead of walls. The standing ovation lasted 7 minutes, the same amount of time that had elapsed between discrimination and transformation in a major city bank lobby 1 year earlier. Have you witnessed discrimination in your workplace or community? Share your story in the comments below. Together, we can continue building a world where everyone feels valued and respected. Subscribe for more stories of quiet power creating lasting change. Share this video with someone who needs to see that transformation is always possible.